Recording. This is Kelly Hall with the Longview Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to our Tech Talks. Today we have Cody and Amy Hurdle. They are co-owners of the Longview Computer Center. So a little bit about Cody is he spent 20 years serving the East Texas community by providing quality IT support to our area businesses. He serves as the CEO of the Longview Computer Center and Cartridge World of Longview. Cody and his friendly team deliver networking, security services, and printing solutions. Amy, who is co-owner, as I mentioned, also serves as a lead instructor of cybersecurity at TSTC in Marshall. She holds 4 current certifications in security and digital forensic. So we're glad to have both Cody and Amy with us today. And I'm going to turn the program over to you guys, and we will leave it on screen mode for your PowerPoint until you tell me to do different. So it's all about you, Cody and Amy.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you all for joining. So as she mentioned, Cody and I have had this really unique experience of building this business up together. So Cody's been with LCC since the very beginning in 2006, and we actually met on the internet in 2008. And before we knew it, we were married in 2009. And then a year later, we purchased the business. And in 2013, Cody very generously fired me and told me to go get my dream job, which is where I am now, teaching at Texas State Technical College in Marshall. So I'm the lead instructor for cybersecurity, and I have the distinct pleasure of starting students out and getting them placed in the IT field all over the state of Texas. So our journey has been fairly unique. We've had the ability to grow the business side by side. I've got the theory, he's got the practice, and together we kind of can go back and forth between what's written in the textbooks and then what's happening in the real world. And I can give that information to my students as well. So there's a lot of fear and trepidation about cybersecurity, and it seems very complicated, especially for a small business owner. So what we want to do today is just to give you some real world advice, some common sense advice on how to create a plan to protect your business and keep your business running securely and efficiently. So as far as what we're going to do today, we're going to review a fascinating real world security incident. We're going to talk about some general cyber awareness as it pertains to your business and the assets inside it. Then we will talk about best practices and how we're going to put those into action, and some more stories of things that we've dealt with in the past. And we're going to complete our talk with 3 action items to help you get moving on your journey to secure your network. So in 2017, a fish tank in the lobby of a Las Vegas casino used a smart gadget to automatically feed the fish, keep the environment comfortable, the water warm enough, adjust the salinity, but that device was not properly secured. So it became a weak link in the casino security because it was used to gain a foothold into the network. The hackers then scanned for other vulnerabilities on the network. They moved through it, and they exfiltrated about 10 gigabytes of data to a device in Finland under the guise of streaming audio and video protocols, the same things you would use for YouTube or Netflix. So they pulled it back from the network, out the thermostat, and then out to the cloud in another country. By the time this was discovered, of course, it's already too late. The data is gone. What I like about this is it's very subtle, it's sophisticated, and it's kind of unconventional. You wouldn't necessarily think about a smart thermostat being able to do something like that. So in this world full of global connections, these laws vary from country to country. It can be very difficult to criminally pursue cybercrime, especially in other countries. And in some places, it's just not illegal at all. So this kind of gives us a broader perspective on the things that we're up against. You may not have a fancy fish tank in your lobby as an attack vector, but I know that you've probably got some IoT lights or smart speakers or smart watches or thermostats or something. Small businesses tend to think that since they're small fish in a big ocean, they're less likely to be attacked, and they don't have to remain quite as cyber vigilant. But in fact, small businesses are more susceptible to cyber attacks. So 82% of ransomware attacks in 2021 were against companies fewer than 1,000 employees. And 75% of small to medium-sized businesses could not continue operating if they were hit with ransomware today. Small businesses are not really expected to have the same sophisticated security controls in place as the big Googles and Facebooks and places like that. So that does make them a target. Hackers are going to cast a wide net. They're going to wait for an employee or organization to take the bait and then reel them in. And before you know it, you're one of those statistics. So we want to keep you from having that. Cyber awareness keeps you safe both personally and professionally. Previously, you could just hand over the responsibility for IT or cybersecurity to a qualified IT team like Longview Computer Center. But today we need your help. We view this more as a partnership because 85% of data breaches are caused by employee mistakes. They're internal to the organization. So the first line of defense is you and your employees. We have to have a partnership as a trusted advisor and your business to be able to come up with strategies that are going to keep you safe. You're the one holding your client's data, so we recognize that you're liable for any incidents that could occur. So let's talk about some of the things that when LCC goes into a business to evaluate it, here's the things that we kind of consider and what we look at. So first off, do you know your network infrastructure? This is the physical devices on your network. Your computer systems, your network devices, routers, switches, and then any software and licensing that you have. Is all of your equipment provided in an office, or do your employees bring their own equipment in, which opens you up to a whole nother level of attack? What IoT devices are present on your network, and what kind of traffic are they doing? So your smart speakers, your lighting, your security cameras especially, what is actually present on your network that needs to be secured? That's our first step kind of. And then once we get through the physical inventory, we go to more of a virtual inventory. What are the pieces of data that you need on a day-to-day basis to make your business run? So a virtual inventory could be things like sales records, credit card transactions, mailing and email lists, support info, health and medical records, payroll records, finance, business leads, product design for research and development, or any legal, tax, or financial correspondence. There are 3 states that data can exist at. It can be at rest, meaning it's stored on a hard drive somewhere. It can be in motion, meaning it's being transmitted somewhere. And it can be in use, meaning it's currently being processed. Data has to be protected at all 3 states. So we look at the data that you use every day. Where does it go? Who has access to it? And we do that in a variety of different ways, like encryption or encrypting a hard drive, encrypting network traffic, things like that. It's all vital and it's required. Then how your business works day to day, where is information stored and how long? So do you have a government regulation in play that says you have to keep your data for 7 years, 10 years, just in case? Does that data contain any personally identifiable information so that if it was to be leaked, that would be an incident for your company? Where is your data backed up and how quickly can it be recovered? Who has access to the data that you collect when it's stored? And again, how long is it going to be stored? So once we understand your individual day-to-day business operations, we can kind of start to answer those questions. And then what regulations does your business need to adhere to? And are you aware of those? And are we taking the proper precautions? So for credit card processing, we have PCI DSS. For health info, we have HIPAA. For student records, we have FERPA. Information processing has FIPS regulations. Criminal justice uses CJIS. Financial products for consumers is going to be under GLBA, or then COPPA for data protection for children. So depending on which parts of data your business is reaching into, you're going to have different standards and regulations that we need to make sure are being met to keep that data safe. So this is day 1 of Security Plus class. The number one thing we teach about cybersecurity is the CIA triad. Everything comes back to these 3 important InfoSec concepts, and everything we do is centered around these 3 principles. Confidentiality is making sure that information is only visible to the people that need it to do their job. Integrity is making sure that information hasn't been moved or altered or deleted. And availability means that when you need your data or you need your technology to work, it works. And if something goes wrong, you have a plan to be able to get it back up and running again. So everything that we focus on has to do with confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So now that I've turned you into this guy, how do you create this plan? How do you apply these principles to your business to get results? And now I'm going to turn it over to Cody.
Thank you, Amy. Y'all bear with me. I came down with Bell's palsy a couple of weeks ago, so this side doesn't work real well, and I kind of have a speech impediment. So bear with me, Amy. I may ask you to jump in. When thinking about your business and all the things that can go wrong, especially in IT, if you don't look like this guy at some point, you might not be thinking about all the scary things that can happen. So making a plan is what helps. That way you always have something to go back to as things change and as things evolve. Next slide. Get to my notes here, excuse me. Here we go. Knowing what your weaknesses are is really where it starts. So you make that inventory of like Amy was saying, of your physical assets and then your virtual assets. So what hardware are you using and what data do you have out there, and where is it stored? As well as personnel. I mean, personnel is an asset as well, your employees at your company. And so once you have this list and see who has access to what, you can lay that information out and see, okay, now where are my weaknesses? That's also a good time to call in a third party or some kind of a trusted advisor, somebody that knows what they're doing, who's looked at this before, who can help you figure out what those weaknesses are, and how to deal with them. Based on those weaknesses, you make your plan. So page 1 is you're going to write down, okay, here are my weaknesses. Here are things that I need to look at. Here are things that can be hacked. Here's where important personal information is at that we don't want anybody getting access to who doesn't need to. And on your second page is going to be, okay, what are you going to do about those weaknesses? How are you going to protect yourself? How are you going to protect that data? And what kind of standard operating procedures do you have in place whenever a customer comes in and makes an order and does a transaction, whatever that looks like? How is that information processed through the system? What information do you retain? So many businesses these days, just for reliability, they don't retain customer credit cards, which is smart because you don't want that information sitting there where it can be taken. So figuring out what is on your end and what's not is a big part of that. So here are your weaknesses, and here are what you're doing about those weaknesses. And then you move on to your third page, which is what are you going to do when one of those weaknesses is exploited? When everything on the second page fails, what is your backup plan? Unfortunately, it is just so common. You can have all your updates done. You can have antivirus installed. You can train your staff, and inevitably, maybe you get a temp in and they click the wrong button, and now you got ransomware, right? So when all of the checks and balances don't work or get bypassed, what is your backup plan to get back up and running? And that goes into business continuity and whatnot, and it's important for every business to think about. It's like saying, well, what if the building burned down? Okay, you've got insurance to help pay for the building, but how are you going to get your business back up and running in the meantime while you're building a new building? Have those contingency plans in place. So if we could give you 6 practical, common sense things that would make a big difference in your business's security posture, it would be these. Understanding what's in your business and how to secure those. That's what this list is. This is not everybody necessarily needs all of these things, but everybody absolutely needs some of these things. So that's part of what you're figuring out as you're going through your business and making this plan. So step one is just securing your endpoints. So what are your endpoints? That should be on your list, on your inventory list. What are your endpoints? Are your endpoints computers in an office? Are they laptops? If they are laptops, do they travel? Are they tablets? Are they phones? You know, what does that look like? What are your endpoints? So on those endpoints or those systems, you want to make sure that you have strong passwords. I know everybody preaches that and hears that, but most people still don't do it. That's one of the things as an IT guy. I've been in over the years, probably hundreds, if not thousands, of just different places, and it's still to this day common to see, a sticky note underneath the keyboard or hanging on the monitor with the password. How secure is that, right? One of the ways people get into businesses is shoulder surfing, where they're just walking through an office, but as they're walking through that office, they can look over people's shoulders and see information. If you got a sticky note with your password up there, I mean, there you go. They can do whatever they want with that, right? So you want to be secure. So have a secure password that's in a secure location, and that means, gosh, Amy, what's the recommendation now? I mean, it's been 8 characters for a long time, but I think they bumped it up now.
I think it's 12 now.
12, yeah. So, 12 characters, numbers, letters, punctuation, capitalization, lowercase. And people can get creative. Something else that I've seen a lot of folks start doing that's not hard is coming up with a phrase instead of just a bunch of weird characters you can't remember. Maybe you have a phrase. Maybe you use a phrase. Mary had a little lamb, except put capitalization in places, put punctuation in between the words. Maybe use an @ sign for an A, or just things like that. Adding a year at the end of it. If you have a personal saying, that's something else to think about. But get creative with that, so that you've got something that can't just be hacked in seconds. These days, especially with new computing power that's out now, I mean, most things, if somebody does a brute force attack, 5 years ago, well, maybe it would take a week to crack this password. And nowadays, with new computing power, well, it might take 8 hours to crack the same password. So as technology evolves, it's getting easier and easier for the bad guys to do that kind of thing. Make sure that you have a paid antivirus. There's a lot of free antiviruses out there, and I guess it's better than nothing. But you really need to have a paid anti-malware, antivirus software of some kind that's keeping up live with up to the minute breaches and such, so that as things get patched and fixed and found, they can push out those updates and make sure that your stuff is updated as well, so you don't fall into those traps. Use multi-factor authentication. I think most folks these days have experienced that somewhat. It's becoming more and more prevalent. Just means you have more than one way to prove that you are who you are. Most folks will get like a text message on their phone or use a multi-factor app, but use multi-factor authentication. It's another vector that proves you are who you say you are when you log into something. Keeping your software up to date. That means Windows updates. That means updates for your QuickBooks or whatever applications that you're using. They're patching security holes all the time. If you're still using Windows 7 on something, then you are asking to be hacked. One of the things Amy mentioned earlier was that they use a wide net. So understand when a hacker who is 12 years old in Romania decides that he wants to do this, I think they call them script kiddies anymore. You get a kit. They don't even know how to code. So they will run these programs that scour the internet looking for potential marks, and they might get back a list of 100,000 hits. Okay, well then, so here's 100,000 possible people I could hack. All right, well then now I'll run this other set of tools on those to see of those, well, who's most vulnerable. Okay, well, I narrowed it down to 50,000. All right, so now I got 50,000 of these, and they run a different set of tools, and they keep narrowing it down till you end up with 100 or 1,000 or whatever of real prime prospects or people that you want to get information on, and then they target them. So if you have a computer sitting there that fits that criteria, then all of a sudden you're a target. So that's what we mean by a wide net. Um, so keeping things up to date is one of the biggest ways to help prevent that from happening, because part of what they're scanning for are things that aren't up to date, security holes that have not been filled. It's also a great idea, with folks like us at Longview Computer Center, or really just any IT company. Everybody's got some type of way to monitor your endpoints for malicious activity. Now that doesn't mean they're seeing everything you're doing. That means that they can tell, hey, this computer's not acting right. Maybe the amount of activity that it's passing over the network is a lot more than normal. Why is it doing that? Is there a reason for that? If it's a customer, you can call and ask and say, hey, you working real hard over there? Are you moving a bunch of files and stuff? Everything cool? Just to make sure that things are working as they should be. And then finally, as far as securing your endpoints, really the biggest, most important one is training your employees. Training your employees so they know what's normal and what's not. Unfortunately, employees, us humans, are the weakest link. If you see a message that looks weird, don't just click through it. Find out why it's weird. Get some help on that. Ask your IT about it. Moving on, controlling access with a domain environment. A lot of that depends on the size of your business, but if you're a business of 1,000 people or more, big company, then yeah, you better be using the domain, because it's just too hard to keep up with employees and whatnot. With a domain, you have a centralized location that determines who can and who cannot access specific devices. So you can control their usernames and their passwords. You can control policies throughout the network, who can log in, when they can log in, and you can use that least privilege. Amy, can you explain the idea of least privilege?
So least privilege as a concept is basically the employee doesn't need access to anything more than they need to actually do their job. So you don't want everyone to have access to payroll unless they're actually in the department that deals with payroll. We tend to kind of give people administrative access because it's easier to just let people install and do, because they will call in for IT and do tickets less. But that ends up being something that can be an issue when they override, like Cody was saying, some of those safeguards that are in place because they have that administrative access.
Exactly. And if you're not one of those big companies, if you're a company with 5 people or 10 people, it's still a great idea. The cost is the barrier of entry usually, but it doesn't have to be. You can spend $1,200 on a server that all it does is Active Directory, which is what gives that access and that control on a domain. So it doesn't have to break the bank. It doesn't have to be a $10,000 or $15,000 server. If you're a bigger place and you can afford that and you're going to utilize all that technology, great, go for it, use it. But if you're one of the little guys, you can still have the control without having to spend all that money. But at least you have some way then, and the same concept is works with email and whatnot too. But you want to be able to have control at an administrative level of who has access to machines and email and different devices in your company. And especially if you have like temps that come in or something like that. If you have somebody who, a disgruntled employee or something like that, you want to be able to just turn off their access as quick as you can, just to prevent problems from happening. And then moving on to backups. Backups are a huge deal. Centralized, reliable, image-based backups. And image-based backups, there's 2 major kinds of backups. There's file and folder, and there's image-based. Image-based backups takes a picture of the whole computer so you get everything. So especially on a server, that's what you want. But in general, if you can get an image-based backup, that's going to be a lot more secure and a lot more comprehensive to make sure that you got everything. So it uses both a local storage and a cloud element. So the idea being that things get backed up as often as every 15 minutes. Most folks do every hour, every couple hours. That usually works for most people and will use a less storage. But you can do it, like I say, as often as every 15 minutes or so to back things up. And all of that gets stored locally, and then at night, or whenever you have it scheduled, then that information goes up to the cloud. So if your server dies, then you can restore from your local backup. If the building burns down and your server and the backup are gone, well, then you still have your backup from the cloud. So you've got those contingencies in place, so that you're covered in any disaster. So it's again, it's backing up the entire state of the PC, not just the files. That will improve your disaster recovery, your business continuity. It's got versioning to recover overwritten and deleted files. It's not just for use in disasters. I couldn't tell you how many times we've gotten a phone call and had to restore an Excel spreadsheet or something, just one single file. You can do that too on demand. And if you're, if you realize that something's broke like that, it's a whole lot nicer to be able to go back to an hour ago versus, 6 months ago or something like that. So, and then backups are consistent and automatic. And really the most important thing in any backup, in my experience, is that it does not rely on a human to happen. Because if it relies on a human, well, humans get sick, humans get busy, humans forget to click the thing, or they click the wrong thing and make a mistake. We're human, we make mistakes. But if it's set up to just work on an automatic, continual basis, then it becomes reliable. Then you know that it's done. Now, on the back end, there's still a human element, making sure that those backups are valid and working in case you need them. But as far as the process getting done and happening, that should not rely on a human. Firewalls. Firewalls are controlled. Firewalls. Think of firewalls kind of like the bouncer into a nightclub. They figure out who has access and who doesn't, who can come in and what they can do. That's also provides kind of like a antivirus at the internet level. With a firewall with UTM is what it is, Unified Threat Management. That's content and web filtering, so you can keep employees from going to known bad sites or productivity killers. If you don't want people going to YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, you can block that kind of stuff. But it's also going to protect you from malware sites, and sites with known viruses and exploits and things like that. They also analyze network traffic so that they learn what's normal for your business. And when it sees an anomaly, it says, hey, is this okay? And it lets somebody know what's going on. They can also help with spam filtering, VPN connectivity. VPNs are very important for anybody who is working like from home or from a remote location. If you want to merge two networks together, if you have offices at different areas or something like that, and you want them all to talk to each other, most likely they're going to do that. If they're doing it the right way, they're going to do that through a VPN, which is going to encrypt that traffic both ways, both directions, to make sure that nobody's doing a man-in-the-middle attack or something along the way. Excuse me. Secure your remote users. A VPN will encrypt that traffic. That's really the best way to do it, making it a lot more difficult for any hackers to intercept or read sensitive data. Back to the two-factor authentication, that provides an extra layer of security by requiring a second factor, like a code sent to your mobile device, in addition to your password, before they can use that VPN to access the network. And remote users are accessing company resources, files, applications, as if they were sitting at the desk at the main office. But they get a secure net connection no matter what type of network they're using or device they're using whenever they have that VPN set up. And then finally, you need regular security assessments. Unfortunately, IT, it's just always changing, just like most businesses, just like most industries. Things are always changing. You gotta keep up with it. You gotta evolve, or you start falling behind. So regular security assessments. What's changed? Do you have a new employee? Are you using new devices? Did you get a new piece of software? Did your standard operating procedures to do the thing, whatever it is that you do, did that procedure change? If it did, then that could absolutely affect your security posture. Maybe they're logging in a different way or going to a different website. So what are the ramifications of that, if any? A lot of times you may see that and, okay, well, we're still protected. Nothing's changed. That's fine. But at least you know, yes, something has changed and yes, it's still secure. So we're good. We can move on now, which is a good, which just goes back to why it's such a great idea to have this stuff written down. So you can look and see where those security vectors are. They're also, help businesses to identify and mitigate security risks. That's going to help you ensure compliance with industry and regulatory standards, increase confidence in the security of your systems and data through that continuous improvement. A few war stories for you, things that we've seen in our business. First one was an email attachment. We have a company, and they do, it was a warehouse, and they did, what was it, a metal fabrication, I believe. So the way their industry works is it's a bidding war, more or less. Somebody needs a job done, and they put it out to bidders over the entire U.S., and then it's kind of first come, first serve, and based on pricing and whatnot. So that's how they get their jobs, and they're competing with everybody in the country. So at this particular client, so the thing about that is if they're down for an hour, well, potentially they've lost on a $100,000 sale because they weren't there and able to give their quote in time before some other bidder won the contract. So anyhow, they have one of their users who got an email message that looked like it was from one of their clients, and it had an attachment saying, click here, do this. And they did. They did, unfortunately. And someone had spoofed an email address of their client. And that now, in order to do this, they had to go through about 3 different prompts that said, are you sure you want to do this? But again, the human element, I'm in a hurry. I'm trying to do the thing. Yes, I'm sure. Just do it. Hurry up, And so they had to click through, like I say, about 3 different prompts saying, are you sure you want to do this? And they did it. Well, next thing they know, every icon on their desktop changed, and they couldn't access things, and they had gotten some type of ransomware. Within minutes, it had also moved to the server, and people couldn't access stuff on the server, because whenever that happens, one of the first things they do is, do you have any map drives? Do you have anything on the network that I can go and spread to? So their server was locked up. So the whole business was shut down. Now, luckily, we had backups and whatnot in place. We got them back up and running pretty quickly. Within the server, we just took the computer away from her for the time being, since it was infected. But the server, we were able to get back up and running within an hour or two, and they were back in business. But I mean, that's still downtime, and for an industry like theirs, that's still potentially the potential loss of a lot of money, even though everything worked like it was supposed to in the event of a disaster. So it's, educating your users again is a big deal. Had another one where somebody was working from home. And so what does working from home mean? That means they were remoting into a computer at the office. Fortunately, this computer was the server. So they were remoting into a server using RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol, which is just the basic as basic gets. That's how you remote into a server, is using that. And they had a weak password. They weren't using a VPN or anything like that. And they got crypto. And of course, now this person, this wasn't a customer of ours. This happened to them, and then they brought us the leftovers and said, "Can you help?" And unfortunately, by that time, there wasn't a lot we could do. They actually ended up paying the ransom. They paid the ransom, and I think, I don't forget how much it was. It was like $5,000 or $10,000. I mean, it was a substantial amount. They paid the ransom. Whoever did this to them, they sent them a decryption key and instructions on how to fix their problem. And we got in there and we tried it, and they tried it, and guess what? It didn't work. It didn't work. So not only were they out their info, they were out the money for the ransom, and they still didn't have their data. Okay, well, here we are. What can we do now? Well, do you have any backups? Yes, we have a backup. I know that we do. Okay, wonderful. Let's get that. Let's get you back up and going. So we go and we start looking at their backups. Their backup was a manually attached external hard drive that somebody had to go in and click and make it happen. It wasn't automated. It relied on a human. And the earliest backup they had was 10 months old. So they lost a year of data because of that incident, all because they didn't have any kind of, it was just weak passwords. So 10 months of their data, and that is a hard thing to recover from. That's a hard thing to recover from. And then lastly, watching the movie, that was another one. Had somebody, there was an employee there, and they wanted to watch a movie, like watching Netflix or something at work kind of thing. But I think it was probably something that was still in theaters. So probably through a Google search, how do I watch this movie online? They found something that said, sure, just download this client and it'll let you watch all the movies in theaters, Oh, great. So they do that. They click it. Of course, it wasn't real. Turned out to be ransomware. It encrypted their machine and encrypted the RDP server. And it was a whole mess. So we got to get that cleaned up. But again, the weakest link was a user. So to sum up, take an inventory. Take an inventory. That's where it starts. Whether you mow lawns for a living and you've got 2 employees, or you're a tax office with multiple locations and you've got 300 employees, or you're some big corporation with thousands of employees, step 1 is just take an inventory. See what you're dealing with. What devices do you have and what data do you have? And where do those live? How do they interact? Have that inventory. Based on that inventory of devices, data, and people, what are your weaknesses? Where are the things that you need to look at? And that's where, again, some kind of trusted advisor would help. Or if you have an IT guy that you trust who's done this kind of thing before, sit down and talk with somebody about, this is my business, this is my stuff. Where do I need to take steps? Here's what I'm doing now. Is it enough? Those kinds of questions. And then make a plan to address those weaknesses, and then, of course, iterate, because it's a never-ending process where you want to make sure that you before the next big update, or when you make the next big plan, or you expand or something like that, that your security posture is also expanding with your business. Amy, do you have anything to add?
I don't think so. Nothing in particular, unless anybody has any questions or comments before we wrap up.
Oh, we can't hear you, Kelly.
It would help if I would turn my microphone on. So we have plenty of time for questions. Let's open up the floor.
This is Ken. I don't have any questions, but I just want to let you know that was a great presentation with a lot of good information.
Well, thank you, Ken. That's really our goal, is to share that kind of information as much as we can. It doesn't have to be rocket science. A lot of it is just practical, common sense things of making sure you're protected. And now sometimes when you get into how to implement the change, you can get in the technical. Well, that's what the IT people are for. But as a business owner, just what steps am I taking to make sure I'm secure? That's what we're shooting for. I hope we're hitting that mark, but we're trying to get better at it as best we can. So I appreciate the comment. Thank you.
You're hitting the mark.
All right, thank you, sir. Anybody
Well,
else?
I have a question.
Sure.
With people taking their devices home and bringing them back to work, whether that's an iPhone, a tablet, a laptop, etc., would you touch on the importance of making sure those devices are clean if you're going to log into your workplace, and the why behind that?
Mm-hmm. Sure. I mean, it's pretty common sense with that one too. As far as, really, it's just all about control. If you have employees bringing their own devices, then, legally speaking and whatnot, it's their device, so you don't have control over it. They can use whatever they want to do with it, right? It's their device. So if they are doing something that compromises their own security while your information is also on their device, then guess what? You're opened up for that as well. So, the most blatant, scary example of that is if you've got people saving locally things like Excel spreadsheets or documents or even PDFs or whatever, any internal information that can be compromised that you don't want being out there, other people seeing. It doesn't need to live on someone else's computer. Access to it should be controlled in such a way that you can revoke that and keep tabs on it. One of the scariest examples I can think of is, I'm sure everybody's heard in the news and whatnot about TikTok. They're trying to ban TikTok and whatnot. With TikTok, if you download this app on your phone and you get into it, and if you're going to use it, somewhere along the line, you could click a button that says, I agree. When you do that, specifically and especially with TikTok, you're agreeing to give them access, not just to TikTok and everything you do on it, but everything on your phone. That's in there. Am I right on that, Amy? I mean, it's that blatant, right?
It's that, it's also all the other devices on the network that it can find.
Yes. So if they're on a
Very
Wi-Fi,
broad.
yeah, with TikTok open and okay, so one real easy example to talk about that. So what does that say about if they're using their phone to log into their company email that has in that email, you've got attachments that has a list of all your customers. Guess what? TikTok has that information now, based on, and they can access it and they can do whatever they want to with it legally because you clicked I agree. So a lot of folks don't understand what they're agreeing to, but that potential is there, and depending on who you talk to, it's certainly being exploited. So it's something to think about. Definitely something to think about. At every place that they'll let me, customers and whatnot, clients will have multiple Wi-Fi networks in place and be like, okay, if you have a phone, this is the network you use. If it's a printer or a company device of some kind, it gets its own special one that nobody else can access, so that you're segregating that traffic and segregating those devices so they don't touch or talk to each other to help mitigate any of those kinds of situations. Does that answer your question, Kelly? Does that help?
It did, and I appreciate you bringing up TikTok because I do know that of numerous workplaces who do not allow TikTok on any device that's owned by the company, nor can employees connect any of their devices to any network information because of the TikTok situation that's out there. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Another question has to do with USBs. So oftentimes people will save information on a USB drive and then just transport that data back and forth between home, work, and who knows who else's computers. So what is your advice about USB drives?
Don't use them. That's pretty much the easy answer. USB drives in general, they can be good for backups in some cases or whatnot. We use them internally here for things like if we need to move a customer's data from their old computer to their new computer or something, depending on how much data it is. Sometimes we can do it that way and whatnot. But the idea of keeping a USB drive in your pocket or in your purse or whatever with important information on it, one, just in and of itself, just that data at rest in that form is extremely dangerous. What if your purse gets stolen or your wallet? What if it falls out of your pocket? I've known people personally who they had a USB device with some stuff on it, and it fell out of their pocket, and then they ended up it fell out when they were getting in the truck, and guess what? They ran over it. And there's no coming back from that, man. It's gone now. I hope you got it back up somewhere. So those are, just simple things there. But furthermore, that is a known tactic from hackers and whatnot. They're trying to get into some company somewhere. They'll have a USB drive and they'll leave it in the parking lot. Or maybe they do a walkthrough or borrow the restroom real quick or something like that, and it ends up in the restroom or just on the floor. And then an employee sees it and they pick it up. And they're like, well, what is this? Well, how do we find out? We plug it into our computer. We plug it into our laptop or our desktop to see what it is and whose it is. And we need to return it to them because we're good people, right? Well, you plug it in, and as soon as you plug in, something is automatically scripted to transfer itself and replicate itself onto that computer. And it all happens in the background in seconds. So nobody knows that it's happened. So heck, it might look like it's a blank drive when they plug it in. It's like, oh, well, I guess it's mine now, haha. Or we don't know, we throw it away, but it's been plugged in. So now that it's been plugged in, and if there is any exploits or weaknesses on whatever it was plugged into, well, now it's a whole lot easier for whoever this hacker was to get access to that computer that it was plugged into. So, it's a lot safer to transfer files using something like, Google Drive or OneDrive or Dropbox or something like that, where somebody has to log in and download it. It's not just plugging it in. So that USBs can be really useful for lots of things, but it absolutely does not need to be like an exclusive device that you use. And if it's for a backup, then that means you plug it in and you back it up, and then you take it and you store it where it goes. Some people will do that and they'll store it, like I know some folks who have stored it in a safety deposit box or something in case the place burned down. Well, now their backup's in a safety deposit box. And that's a lot more work that I think you'd have to go through, but some people do that. And it can be a safe way to do it. But so yes, there are ways that they can be good, but in general, just general use, it should not be your go-to. It should not replace the floppy drives or things like that. Uh-oh, you're muted again.
Excellent. Any additional questions for Cody or Amy? Well, I want to say thank you because the content is fabulous. And I don't think we can hear this information too many times. So for those of you on the call, thank you. And we will be sharing this through our eBuzz, and you can share this content back out. It will be on our website within the next week. And we just want to say thank you. So any final questions before we end today's session? Well, thank you again and have a great day.